Not all subcultures are bad, right?
Yeah.
And I think, they're often highly developmentally appropriate for you.
And you also talked about when you were working with young people, you were very intrigued by the subcultures. I would like to know more what subcultures you were referring to and what are your observations on those subcultures as well?
That's going back a little while, Dev, so you're really stretching my memory banks. I think there was a variety of subcultures. So certainly had some young people that I worked with who were part of goth subcultures, which was always really interesting. And I think certainly the clients that I had at that time were intrinsically very highly self-reflective and and very sensitive to their own inner worlds and the inner worlds of people around them. So, but yeah, that's a really interesting subculture. And I always think the work with young people, I mean, they're so in touch a lot of the time and more than people give them credit for. I think they're super aware of what's happening in their environment and in the world, and so are deeply affected existentially by those issues. So I think if you spend long enough with any young person, you'll learn that. So, look, there were lots of different subcultures at the time, and it's, we're going back 30 years, so whatever was in vogue back then was probably the thing that I was working with, yeah.
Interestingly, I think the subcultures do exist in across all decades and time periods. And it has probably been amplified because of social media and and algorithms in your tools, in your platform can push you through a subculture. If you are watching the kind of content, you can be in that echo chamber and that experience is more amplified. So how do you, and every subculture will bring good and bad. Once, yes, you are very observant of yourself, you know who you are, what you want to be, and hence you are part of that subculture or that kind of format. But it is amplified through the algorithmic power of those tools you're using. And how do you see that mental health point of view if somebody is in that subculture or trying to come out of that cycle, vicious circle of that going in and coming out or staying in for longer? And if the net outcome we want as a positive outcome for that person to be not in that subculture, just to be coming out of that virtual space, what kind of intervention and what kind of work needs to be done with that person?
Well, not all subcultures are bad, right? Yeah. And I think, they're often highly developmentally appropriate for young people because they often enter a subculture, whatever that looks like, as a way of battling or finding or coming to terms with their own independence and their own identity. So it's a healthy developmental stage to kind of find yourself a group of friends that feel like you feel like understand you and that you belong in, I guess. So, not all subcultures are bad necessarily. And I think, there are now restrictions on young people's ability to access social media in Australia. So I think that definitely impacts. Can we limit that entirely? Can we limit young people's exposure to various messaging? Probably not. And that's where it kind of gets down to real connection with trusted friends and family around, encouraging young people to have a healthy ability to evaluate the information that they're being given in any platform, I suppose. And, we can all encourage critical thinking skills in each other by having open dialogue around things, but particularly in young people too, that they're not deliberately feeding into ideologies that are potentially harmful, or to evaluate that. So I think particularly around the issue of, disordered eating and the imagery that people get about the norms that they're supposed to conform to in terms of body image and size and height and weight. And it's not just young people now, it's young women now, it's young men as well. There is a lot of pressure around those sorts of things. And again, it's about how do we help young people develop the ability to critically evaluate the information they're being given. Yeah.